How you doing, folks? Today I'm going to answer a question left in the comments section on my video. That's something I'm starting to do now. So if you want a question answered, then make sure it's good enough and something that the whole community will want to hear. Also, it doesn't hurt if you are a subscriber. That will probably raise the chances of your question being answered. Of course, I try and answer every single question anyway, but you know, it'll either be a couple of lines, maybe a couple of words, or an entire video like this. So what do you want? And you know, as the channel grows, yeah, okay, so I feel videos like this might be better, especially, you know, it does help more people, and I think it's just more welcoming to newer members. So yeah, it's more the personal touch. Sorry if there's a bit of a focus thing going on. I'm actually doing this on my mobile rather than with a real camera. But hey, again, the personal touch. What do you want? That's why there's not going to be an intro outro on this video either. Professionalism. So, let's get to it. Dave Clynch asks, can you recommend a Photoshop-like program that is for sale? I don't like the sales model of paying monthly, aka renting on Photoshop. Fully agree with you there, Dave. When Adobe first announced that they were changing to a pay monthly scheme rather than a buy outright kind of model for each of their applications, I was kind of Hulk level mad. This is where normally if I was doing this kind of full editing wise in Premiere, I would edit in, you know, a nice little video clip of the Hulk. So you'll just have to imagine that, you know. Plus I don't get a copyright strike from YouTube for doing that. Yeah, I was absolutely frantic. I mean, I've been using Adobe products for camera focus. I've been using Adobe products since, you know, years, since the mid 90s, early 90s. I've found a couple of years back, I found Illustrator 2 on floppy disk. With a black and white cover. That's how bad it was. And I'm not talking CS2, CC2, you know, none of that. For all you young ones that don't know what I'm talking about, yeah, Illustrator 2, like the original version. Oh my god, it's old. It's old. You probably don't remember floppy disks either. They were a thing. This isn't some retro joke. I'm old. It's real grey, it's not just shading. Point being, I was angry because what I used to do, this looks like I'm dancing with the focus just going in and out. Sorry. What I used to do was I used to buy every other version of the Adobe Creative Suite, as it was then called, or the Design Suite, as I used to buy, which was Photoshop and Illustrator and a couple of other things. But I used to just mainly want Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator back then. But I used to buy them every couple of years. So I'd buy version 2 and then 4 and then 6 and so on like that. And they were great. And that was enough. I didn't want to upgrade every single time because you didn't need to, because there weren't enough differences. And I'm the same now with hardware. You don't buy every new version, you know. And if you watched my recent video where I kind of went on a rant about the Surface Pro 6, and I know a few of you kind of harshed me out about that. Well, it was the same thing. You leave a space because otherwise you don't get enough of a difference between the next version. And now with the pay monthly scheme, you kind of, if you pay monthly, then you're forced, it's like being forced to buy every version. That's essentially what the pay monthly scheme is. Now, why do you see me using Adobe products? Why do you see me being okay with the the pay monthly scheme now? Why do you not see me hating on Adobe when you clearly do see me ranting and raving about other people? Okay, I will say, yeah, I'm fully okay with it actually now, and it comes down to a couple of small reasons. One, I actually use a lot more Adobe products than I used to do. All my YouTube videos are edited in Adobe Premiere. I use After Effects for my fancy intros and outros and everything. I've actually done animation in After Effects as well. They've got an awesome piece of software called Character Animator. If you haven't tried that, I was a beta tester on it really early on. It blew my mind how good that was. Over the years, I worked on so many different pieces of software. InDesign as well was a big application for me throughout the early 2000s when that first rolled out, when it became a really strong application. Flash, I haven't used it in years, but back when it was Macromedia and then they took it over, they did a lot of work on it and made it really strong. But realistically now, I probably use about 6 pieces of Adobe software, 7 maybe even 8. Wow. Yeah. So realistically, the pay monthly scheme, if you're just buying 1 or 2, yeah, I could see it's not really maybe worth the money for you. But if you're somebody like me who uses a lot of different pieces of software, especially the big pieces like Photoshop and Premiere and Illustrator, then you're really getting a lot of use out of it. And suddenly paying for it, the whole package, suddenly becomes worth it. And my second reason is that Adobe have actually gone far and above what I ever expected, in the fact that they didn't just go, oh yeah, now it's pay monthly, we'll just take your money and sit on our ass. What they've done is they've taken the money from people and then they're developing more and more applications and they're really working hard for that money. They're developing more applications, they're adding in loads of applications and add-ons and features for each application. They're making all these things better, and they're actually giving up loads of stuff every year for all of this, and at very little extra cost. Like they're bringing out Photoshop for the iPad, and they're just chucking that in. It's like I have the full app service for Adobe, and I don't even have an iPad Pro. I'm thinking about getting one, but I'm gonna get that Photoshop for the iPad Pro at no extra charge. That's pretty cool that they bring out another app and I don't have to pay any more for it. Whereas I think a lot of other companies would charge you extra for that. So there's a lot of apps in the bundle that I'm not taking advantage of, basically, and that I could be for that cost. So I'm happy enough with that. Anyway, that wasn't the question here, but I just wanted to cover that I am happy as somebody who actually does pay for that. Moving on to Dave's question here is, can I recommend anything else like it? Now, Affinity Photo is an application you can get and you can use. I've tried it, I've used it, I like it. I think the brush engine needs a little bit of work, and it's good. It's very cheap, affordable, I think is a better word. It depends on your style. If you're doing true digital painting, I mean, Photoshop wasn't built for digital painting. So, I'm just mentioning this because that's more my style as well. And I found that it wasn't as good for digital painting as Photoshop was. But if you're not a digital painter, then you're not going to notice that. Affinity Photo is more like Photoshop than anything else. And I found that Affinity also do an Illustrator-based program. So the specifics of the question, a Photoshop-like program, Affinity Photo is awesome. And it's a lot cheaper. And these guys are still developing it. I've even had a conversation with those guys, and they're pretty awesome as well. So I'm fully happy to kind of recommend those guys and their application. The only thing I personally just felt that for painting the brush engine, it still needs like the next version. I think the engine will be a lot better. But I mean, the last time I really had a go with it, a month or so ago, there were some glitches with the Microsoft Ink engine. I think everybody, remembers the problems that we had about a month ago, and then the problems we had a few months ago as well, where people were having major problems with their tablets. So yeah, that could have just been that, but yeah. Affinity Photo is definitely one way to go if you don't want to have to pay a subscription. They charge less than $100, and it's a pretty cool application. Now, Critter is something if you want to go totally free of charge. It has a lot of features built in. Is it good? I tend to stay away from that kind of application. But if you are a beginner and wanting to start out, I mean, people naturally think Photoshop. But then if you're a beginner, if you're a total beginner and you want to start, Critter's not a bad place to start. But I'd say once you get kind of 1 year in, back away from Critter. Why? Because if you don't back away soon, you will get stuck there. You will be then afraid to kind of learn a new tool. Now, I do beta testing for a lot of different companies. I try and find every single beta testing program I can, and it's good because I learn lots of new pieces of software. It's a lot of fun. But it means that I don't get afraid to learn new pieces of software. And I find that a lot of people I talk to do. They only use one thing. They've used it for years and they're a bit scared of trying new things. But people who use Critter, I found, have used it for years and years and years and don't want to try anything else. And in fact, they try and convince other people to use Critter. And it's like, no, Critter's for beginners. And I understand there's a total, kind of community support thing. But, how many professionals do you know who use Critter? I love the community support about it, but it's just no, move away. Anyway, other tools that I think are great, like Photoshop. I'm trying to think like Photoshop. I mean, are you talking about from an artist perspective, or are you talking about from a photo editing perspective? Because it's they're two different things. If you're talking about from me for a digital artist, then Painter is absolutely wonderful, and it's still not on a wholly subscription based price. So, but if you're talking about photo editing, there's still a few options out there, but more and more companies are wanting to go back to. I wanted to move forward to subscription models. I think this is something that I'm going to have to tackle in a full-on video like a top 10 list kind of thing. But yeah, I think realistically, Clip Studio Paint is a good one for artists to have a look at as well. Yeah. Somebody else has already made a comment, and I think Sketchbook Pro. Would I really? Sloppy Tunes has made this comment. Sketchbook Pro. I don't know. It's in the name, Sketchbook. It is a sketching app. I've seen some good work done in it. I don't mind it. It's okay. But I don't think it's like Photoshop. That's, for me, the main thing. For a painting app, it's not bad. But it's not professional level. And for me, if I was wanting to do as many things as I could do in Photoshop, no. So, that for me is a question I'd have to do some real research on. But I think there's possibly kind of a top 5 list in there. Yeah, maybe not even a top 10. Realistically, the reason Photoshop has such a big following, the reason Photoshop managed to survive the pure hatred it got for going to monthly subscription was because Photoshop's the particular king of the castle. There is nobody who could kick it off its perch. Affinity have only just turned up. These kind of rival applications are only just starting to appear. Realistically, there's nobody else who can kind of rival Photoshop for what they do. Procreate on the iPad. Well, the iPad still isn't really a super powerful device. Procreate really isn't a super powerful application. It's not an application, it's an app. They say we're getting Photoshop on the iPad Pro, and I've talked to people. We're not. We're getting a watered down version of Photoshop. It won't have a lot of features. It won't have all the features, that's for sure. The next few apps that we're gonna get that do look like Photoshop still are not gonna be full-on rivals. So anything that I could suggest to you that is gonna be Photoshop-like is still not gonna be a Photoshop rival. Even if it was the same kind of money. Realistically, if you're able to get the use out of the other applications like I do, then, that might be the best way to go about it. I'm happy for what I pay with those other applications. I know it's making me sound a bit like a shill for, saying, oh, I don't mind paying. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm stuck with Adobe as anyone else because, yeah, I don't mind paying. I have to pay because there is no other rival. Nobody does it better than Adobe, sorry to say, but that's what you get when you've got a company who are as old as Apple Macintosh. Nobody else has stood up to rival them. They've got, they have it. Nobody else has it. Nobody has tried to challenge them. Nobody else can do it better. And anybody else who tries to step up to the plate fails miserably because nobody else has Adobe's resources. Nobody else can pour that much into a piece of software. And if they attempt to do it, they get bought out by another company. Or if they do it, they can only do it as a small app. Whereas what we need is another company who can do it and do the Photoshop version, the Illustrator version, the InDesign version, the Premiere version and tie them all together. And we've got companies like Affinity now who are doing, the Photoshop version, the Illustrator version, and they're going to try and do some more versions, which is great. But then we need to fast forward that, 5 or 10 years until they brought them up to the levels of, how Photoshop is now. But then you've got to think what Photoshop will be like then. It's going to be a never-ending war. But then by then will the Affinity apps be pay monthly as well? Because they might have gotten greedy. But this is the problem. There's nowhere to go with the argument other than, it's just never ending. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going a bit deep with this one. I'm chasing my own shoes. Realistically, I think it really depends what you need the app for. If you're just doing some drawing, or if you're doing photo editing, or if you're not using... I think that's a good analogy, actually. If you don't want the entire Creative Suite, which is why I think the Adobe thing works so well, if you don't want the whole Photoshop thing, Photoshop's great because it's an all-in-one application. Maybe if you only do the sketching, just get a sketching app. But if you want a photo editing thing, get something that's better at photo editing, like Affinity Photo. But if you do want to do the sketching, get the sketching app like Sketchbook instead. Or maybe get both of them and pay for both of them. Maybe that's the way to go. Yeah, maybe that's the way to go. Solution reached. But you might have to deal with 2 apps rather than 1 app. Yeah. 22 minutes and I've finally reached a conclusion that I'm happy enough with. Sorry. There you go. Sometimes you just have to witter on. Again, really sorry about the zooming in and out. I mean, that feels a bit weird and crazy, but I try not to. I've got to find an application on my phone that I can film on that lets me just set the focus to manual. I did try, before filming this, I tried looking for one. Actually, the focus set then when I did that. So if I film the entire video whilst doing this, other than looking like Jamiroquai, it works. Move my hand, and the focus will probably start going again. But yeah, if you know an application for an Android phone that lets you set your focus to manual, leave it in the comments. I will download it. Thank you. Anyway, until next time, you stay creative. Drop your questions in the comment section. If you subscribe, then I'm more likely to answer the comment on video. And yeah, have a great day. See you later.